thing you think you've got? The thing you
Oh,
think
it's
you've got? What's one of the things you think you've got?
Wednesday's blue, don't you? Strike that.
See, I would think Wednesday's more green.
No, it's definitely blue. Thursday's green. And the numbers as well, but they're not the same as like Monday's red, but one is yellow, so it's not like corresponding. So then sometimes like Jen often tastes purple.
In our last video, we learned all about the experimentation Holyrood are doing with their whisky, but today we're learning all about how they are experimenting with their gin.
Cool.
But yeah, so this is also Holyrood's room. And when we did the gin, we already had a gin program. Wasn't very high quality, so I think the days of everyone putting out like an Old Tom and a pink gin are really numbered. We had
pink gin. Have you got any pink gin?
How are you choosing your drink by colour?
100%. We're there now. So, but also there was some thinking like, why should we make a gin? Like, we are a whiskey maker. I don't believe like making gin and saying it's your cash cow until you get to whiskey serves a very good like maker's journey perspective. I get that people do it. I understand the commercials. But it just doesn't feel right to me, and it doesn't feel right to Mark.
Do you think the proper whiskey geeks don't take it as seriously then, a lot of the time?
I think there's an element of that, yeah. For customer side of things.
Yeah.
Because they don't see gin as
legitimate.
As whiskey.
No, and it's not. And I don't think the distillers take it seriously either.
Yeah.
Like, I think they look at it and they're like, oh, I've just got to make this fucking gin because I've got an order for Tesco. That's not a call to fight the supermarket. So we did a lot of work on trying to understand our reason why, and the reason for anything that is not single malt, charm circle, or height of arrows, is it just has to tell another element of our whiskey making philosophy. So when we kind of figured that out at first, it was like, holy shit, okay, here's a good rule book for us to work with. If we're going to look at it from a whiskey maker's mindset, then it's like, get rid of all the botanicals, come back to starting base, and can that work? And it didn't. Like our single juniper gins were horrible. I was in New Zealand, my dad was sick, so I went back home for a bit, and Mark was like sending me like, here's this test run, here's this test run. I'm like, this is not working. And it was quite cool to go back there and go, okay, there's a reason why gin makers have botanicals, because juniper doesn't work on its own. But then we're like, but we're not going to go there, so how do we attack that challenge? And so then it became, okay, well, can we modify it? And what can we add that isn't your traditional botanical, which will then stretch juniper? And then it got beer thinking, because we're like, oh my god, juniper could be like a hop. Like, if we look at juniper that way, then what do we do with raw material around it to make it shine? And so that's where we can start at the starting place, and then we'll get into this. Have you tried the other stuff?
We've tried one of the height of arrows gin, haven't we? Do that a tasting.
Yeah, that was the one we did the video on.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, this is pretty one-dimensional because it's just juniper. What we really like with it is that you can find more in the juniper than what you can normally find in juniper, because the sea salt, what we found with salt is it lengthens the palate, so it stretches it right out, and then the wax, of course, like Australia, it just gives you gluten and mouthfeel. And so when we started to see the texture, and that was the thing that was like for us the hook, we're like, fuck me, we have texture and length now. And whiskey thinking, that's all we're working towards, right? We're like, good spirit character, maturation, texture and length.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is really the starting place for our thinking. This is just to like set your palate so that we can attack these other things.
Cool. Nice citrusy tasty gin. Yeah.
When we look at these ones, so once we got like the starting point, it was like the first ask was if this is a good starting point, how far can we push this? And how can we use distillation knowledge and recipe thinking to really take this idea and see how far we can go? So this is the same recipe as that.
All right.
Exactly the same. The only thing that we've done here is this is a multi-shot gin, which we haven't liquored back. So you get to see height of arrows before we cut it with GNS and water it down with spirit, with water. So what you get here is you get way more concentration of the volatiles which are coming off the juniper.
Yeah.
They're manifesting themselves as lime and citrus, which is really fucking cool.
Yeah.
And it's really nice just to see, like, okay, cool. Most people who are doing commercial gins in the world, you know, they're doing multi-shot, they're cutting it back, you know, they make a very consistent product, but you never get to see it at this point.
Yeah,
Definitely.
That's like, it's higher up yet earthier at the same time.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Definitely. It's just a lot more full flavoured, isn't it?
It's full throttle, right?
Yeah, it's lovely. I really like that.
Throwing this, like, and when you see this as like the embryo, and then you start to see these as these things which are growing from it, it's like, here's like the thought.
It's got like a finish like bitter limeade. It just like fizzes and limey and bitter. I really like that.
It's ruthless in a gimlet.
Oh, I can imagine.
It's
Oh,
just
that
like,
would be good.
you're like, okay, I need
Yeah.
1 litre of lime juice now, 1 litre of gin.
Oh, it's still going, like afterwards, it's like chewing on lime peel.
Yeah, fizzy lime. That is so good. That's so refreshing. Lovely.
But the wax and the salt allow it to carry like that.
Got you.
Like on its own, this just collapses. It
So,
goes.
Was there other botanicals that you experimented with before you landed on those two?
So our original thinking was, okay, how do we make something that represents Edinburgh, that's not Edinburgh fucking gin?
Yeah.
How do we like look at the city as, again, like, with that thinking? And the thing that like we landed on, we're like, you know, this is one of the city's got this really nice dichotomy of old or new or living side by side.
Yeah.
And like, could we use that as inspiration? So we started to look backwards at gin recipes. We're looking at modern gin space, and we were doing these things of like trying to make this very oldie, worldy gin and a very modern gin. Modern gin just didn't work, and it wasn't saying anything different to the space. And then it was in the old gin that like style where we're using heavier things. We're like, you know, there's a lot of angelica root and all these like juicy, beefy flavors, licorice. Like, cool, that's cool, but again, this may as well just be Plymouth. Like, it's like, what's the point? So that was where the direction came. But in the older inspired one, that's what kicked us into texture, depth, flavour. Because it started as like, it went to savoury, and we're like, no, savoury not right. And then it was like, actually, let's look at whiskey making thinking, texture, mouthfeel, layer. And that's where we went to.
Definitely.
It's like orange fruit buns now.
Oh, I really like that. That's delicious. So this is the heavy.
And this is heavy.
I take it you're not going to do the kind of Edinburgh gin with your kind of roach. I take
Never.
it not at all. No, definitely not your vibe.
Not ever.
No. They've done very well in that market, it has to be said. Like,
And they were one of the first
They were
as
one
well.
of the first.
100%.
It's like fancy alcohol pops, I see gin liqueurs.
And
Tastes like sweeties.
like, there's nothing on it where I'm looking and going, that shit, we won't make it. It would take away from our story.
It's definitely not the vibe at all. Yes,
No.
yeah, totally.
And you know, there is a direction for this, which we'll get to after tasting these other things, where, you know, as gin gets really prolific and sideways, and there's more and more people in category, and I feel like more and more people making inferior products rather than things which are like excellent.
Definitely.
How do we add to what quality looks like? Quality thinking and quality making. So,
Makes sense.
again, same recipe as this guy, but what we've done here is we've taken the juniper and roasted 20% of the juniper ahead of distillation.
Ooh.
Cool.
So if you think of like spices, 'cause juniper, you might as well think of it as a spice.
Yeah.
If you're making a curry, you know, you throw your spices into the pan, you give them heat first to change the composition of the oils and bring it up. That's exactly what we've done here.
Is anyone else doing that? I had not heard of that at all.
Like, this is such a good market for like gin geeks as well, do you know? Like, this is very cool. I've not tried a gin in this way. I don't think I've tried like the normal gin and the navy strength. This one, It's not. It's got like a sherbety finish, but it's less bitter, citrus, and it's like more fruity floral rather than, which is not what I was expecting.
No.
I find it like softer and chewier.
So we are 8 milligrams of sugar per litre in this, so very lightly sugared, because the roasting of the juniper made it quite acrid and dry and astringent.
Yeah.
And we couldn't find the breadth of flavour, so then when we put a little bit of sugar in there, it just went and it turned into that roasty thickness that sits across the back palate, and then those really interesting little fruit flavours that pop with the sugar.
I find that like it's like a fruity, chewy fudge.
Yes, it's almost a bit creamy. I really like that one.
Definitely very creamy.
So this was phase 1.
Okay.
This was phase 2, which was like, how far can we push it? It was like, oh, we can stretch juniper, like we can make it do different things. So then phase 3 has been like, actually, how far can we take juniper? Like now that, because like it's like, okay, this is just concentrated Holyrood, and this is Holyrood that we've roasted and chucked some sugar in. They're not difficult things for us to go out there and do. It's difficult thinking to get there. And then we're like, okay, let's really take the creative lid off. So this release is going to drop in the next 6 weeks. As soon as I get off my ass and get the labels done. This is called
You're
Funk.
kind of in every element of this place,
I
aren't
know,
you?
my goodness
Everything
me.
is you.
Yeah, I need to employ some people. So this kind of validated us making gin. This validated the thinking of directionally where we push it, and so then we went into a creative space, which was like, what can we actually do with this thing? So I'll let you have a crack at this before we start talking about it.
Oh, that's more pungent, much more pungent and much more citrusy.
Get a bit like a muskiness from it. Yeah, like a bit more unusual.
That smells purple. Does that make sense?
Yes, I get
Have
you. I
colours.
get you. Purple, yeah.
Like really deep purple.
Oh fuck, okay, I've never heard anyone say that.
No.
That makes sense.
What we talk about things like in jaggy, up high, low down,
Whiskey's
smooth,
like, ooh.
velvet.
Yeah.
That's my velvet side.
Yeah, that's fucking great.
It's an easy way to describe it. I think sometimes it's a feeling,
yeah,
not
it's
like
more,
a taste.
yes, definitely. It's more like a feeling or a colour or something rather than
Purple
something
makes
you
sense
can
with this.
specify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this one,
Definitely purple.
Yeah, it's a bit teenage angsty. That's what I find, like sweaty boy socks in a room. So Pete, who was downstairs,
this tastes so much better than my teenage years. This is what my teenage years wishes that they were. That's
Fair.
delicious. I quite like that.
yeah, it's cool.
It's got that must about it. I definitely
It
get
does
the
have
smell.
must, and that's where the funk name comes from. So all of our names are like trying to describe a trajectory of flavour and texture. And so with this, what Pete did was he used a technique of fermentation called snecker, which comes from Eastern Europe, which is you take salt and it's a preserving. You take salt and acid, and then you put whatever, like onions or whatever you want to ferment and preserve in it. So we just filled a bucket full of juniper and
Cool.
forgot about it downstairs for 3 months while this thing just like bubbled away and did its thing.
I was going to say, is the salt still in that one? Because there's a really salty finish on
Yeah,
that one.
you get the citrus and the salt coming through from the fermentation.
Yeah.
We strained it all off. We're left with like this really claggy juniper, and then we rip it through with the same, salt treatment and wax treatment. But what's cool is when you drink across the three, you start to see these like strange elements of where juniper can go when you approach it with a.
Yeah, that's amazing that they're all the
That's so
same
cool.
thing.
Totally
really,
love that. And totally different, all totally different. Like, yeah, very good.
So the takeaway that we've taken next is, okay, cool, we can stretch juniper. We've ignored salt and beeswax, and so we tried to think, well, actually, if you look at them as modifiers, if beeswax is your textural modifier, then there's got to be space for us to play with other textural modifiers. How do oils work, or how can, like coconut, like all those things that give you that like really waxy piece. So we've got some really strong partners in Taiwan. They've been with us since like the last couple of years. They really love Height of Arrows, but they're like, yeah, that's really cool, but this is all Western stuff. Can you give us something which will play into our space over here? And we're like, okay, well, give us a list of flavours that you would say define Taiwanese cuisine and cooking and things that you like. And so they came back with like Szechuan peppers and lots of different oils and a ton of like really cool botanicals that we couldn't get here. Like, so they're like, here we've got Taiwanese juniper, and we're like, bam, zero importing.
Oh
into
wow,
the UK. So
really?
we're like, that would be cool.
Yeah.
So in this element, what we did was we took some of the oil that they have and we macerated it with Szechuan pepper, and then we brought that back in as the modifier adjacent to the juniper, and then the same level of sea salt. So you're just watching one of the modifiers step out of its space and become more front and centre of
That's
the gin.
my favourite, definitely.
It's
I
fun,
love
isn't
that.
it?
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so nice. It's got a really like fresh, citrusy, floralness about it. But I get the spice.
Yeah, that's why I keep bouncing between these two.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I see they're the most similar in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's lovely. I really like that. That's a really good like summery cocktail.
So does that have the Szechuan pepper in the distillation at all, or
No,
just in
it's
the oil?
just in the oil.
Oh wow.
It's like that would be nice with like pineapple juice or something. It's like
Oh
fresh.
yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah, it's really fresh and light, but still flavourful, which I find you don't get many gins that
It
have
smells a
both
bit
of
like
those.
lemon drizzle cake. That's so good. I'm really enjoying that.
What we're really excited about the oil is it's shown us another vehicle where we can drop flavour in, and still get the flavour out, but it's more nuanced and balanced than if we just chuck chilies in there, then this thing would just be like this monster.
Yeah, yeah.
And we don't want to make fireball. We want to make something which still plays within that triangle of that hierarchy that we've created. What I love about this is just the latent heat that comes through at the back. It's just like, you're like, oh, I need another drink.
It is like that's so nice. I love that. We love savoury kind of gins, like spicy savoury gins is my favourite type.
Yeah.
So that's like right up my street. Love that.
That is really tasty. That's my favourite.
And just before we move on, we try a wee cask aged gin.
Candies like a 3% or a 2% piece of the blend which has been matured and would give you a level of complexity in your final gin that maybe you've not seen before.
Yeah, yeah.
But this is just old stuff that we had some of the old gin range chucked into cask just to see what would happen if it was on
So that's sherry cask.
yeah.
Oh, it smells nice. It smells
Dry.
I would say that in a surprise way. Like aged gin for me is one that I've never been mega keen on because it's like, oh, it tastes a bit like whiskey and like gin. It just doesn't for me.
No.
It's a hard sell. Some people do like them. To be fair, we do have some customers who specifically like aged gins. It's just
Yeah,
not
but would
something
you be
I'm-
friends with them and go for a beer with them?
I hate them, the barkers, if you're watching. Don't never trust a person who likes an aged gin. Some suspicion about that. But so would you have that on its own or would you have it mixed?
I would probably have that mixed into something. Like a weird ass old school crossover between an aviation and a Boulevardier, that kind of world. But you know, at the same time, it's
Quite sugary sweet again. That's
It's
why,
quite
isn't
sweet.
it?
Yeah. It's quite floral. It's almost a bit soapy.
But just to tease you a little bit and show you like that we do have some aged stuff coming, but it will be used. We'll release some for the super geeks who are like, oh, I need to know this. And you can buy this in the shop. But it will be. We've got a suspicion that if you just took a small part of that and dropped it into a combination of these, you might just get a fullness or like a little touch of complexity.
So that's nice, that's very drinkable actually.
It is drinkable, but you still sit there going, should I have a whiskey or should I have a gin?
Yeah. Old fashioned or something like that. I think would be that would probably quite nice.
Yeah.
Nice, cool.
Thank you,
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Still got it in your mouth.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our wee diversion from whisky for the moment. Come back next time to join us on the rest of our day out at Holyrood when we'll be trying some rums and some independently bottled blended Scotch whiskies. See you next time. Slange.
So there you go.
And we don't use agree. So
No, I know.
You don't really.
No, we usually we are agreeing more recently. I know we've worked together for a very long while. You'll notice we make similar noises quite a lot of times. So sorry, because we worked together for a while.
Oh dear. Yeah.
People come into the shop and we're like, hello, at the exact same time.